There you are. Okay. Start off with your name, how old you are, how old you were when you were drafted.
My name is Eddie Graham. I was in the Army I was drafted in 1968. I went to Vietnam in 1969 and came home in 1970.
How old were you when you were drafted?
20.
And what was going on in your life when you found out?
I was working at General Electric and had an occupational deferment, and it was supposed to last 3 years, and it did. I asked all my bosses out at GE if they were going to renew the deferment. Yes, they said. Well, in about 2 weeks, I got my draft notice. They did not renew it. Judy and I got married on June the 8th in 1968, and I got my draft notice about a week or two later. And about 2 or 3 weeks after that, I was in the Army. It was a real surprise because I had been, I wouldn't say lied to, I'd been misinformed. And
well, it sounds like you were let down.
yes, I was. I was let down. I was disappointed, to say the least. Mad at the world, if you want.
Yeah.
Went to Fort Benning. That's where I did my basic training. Left Fort Benning and went over to Fort McClellan over in Alabama. Had signed up to go to NCO school, non-commissioned officer school. And the day that we graduated from AIT, they informed me that they had canceled those orders. Not just for me, but for it was about 10, 15 of us, they had canceled orders. They told us to go back to our barracks. My mother and daddy had come over to get me, bring me home. And I told them, I said, y'all go home, I can't go anywhere yet. So I went back to my barracks, and it wasn't 30 minutes they came and got us. I was going to dog school. I had no idea what that meant. I thought they were going to train me to be a dog. I really didn't know. But anyway, after I left Fort McClellan, went back to Fort Benning and stayed down there 20 more weeks training my dog. And then after that, I got a week or so off and went to Vietnam. My job was a dog handler. We were used in the field, in the jungle, to walk point for an infantry unit and to search out for booby traps, personnel, caches of guns and ammo.
Tell me about these booby traps.
Several different kinds. The worst kind, one of our guys got killed in one. It was a hole about 4 foot deep. With grass and stuff laid over the top of it, and he fell in it. Inside that hole, they had put punji sticks, pieces of bamboo that had been sharpened on the end, and he fell into that. And, he didn't make it. The people I grew up with out at Salinaze or Riverside, only one boy had been drafted and went to Vietnam, and that was my best friend.
Yeah.
Donald McGuire. He went over, and he was in an MOS that required him to ride in a tank and drive a tank. And he got a couple of Purple Hearts while he was in Vietnam for running over landmines and getting trapped in the tank. And anyway, he got out okay and came home. And shortly after he got home, he found out he had brain tumors, and he died. So he made it through Vietnam, and he came home and died with brain tumors.
You've made it to Vietnam. Tell me about your first day, first couple weeks there.
Okay, when I first got to Vietnam, I flew in on a regular, we call them Freedom Birds because they brought everybody home. When I got off the jet, I thought I'd be dodging bullets and everything, but no, it was just a big airport like Atlanta. And then after they picked us up, they carried us to an in-country training facility. They wanted us to get acclimated to the weather and just to give us some helpful information. and stayed there for a week or two. Everybody went to different places, and the last one that was called back was me, and I got to go to the 101st. I had to get ready to go in the field. You always had an experienced guy, a new guy like myself, always had an experienced person that had been there for a while. We called it walking slack. It was the guy that was right behind you when you were out in the field. Well, this guy was from up north. His name was Pinkney. I don't remember his first name. All I remember is his last name. We just called him Pink. We went out, and he went with me to show me the ropes. First mission, nothing. We didn't find anything. I mean, it was just 4 or 5 days wasted, and it came back in. Well, we had 28 people in our unit. And when you went out on a mission and you came back, you went to the bottom of the list and you worked your way back up to the top. Well, the Lord just must have been really looking out after me, because I didn't run into any really bad stuff. A little, but not real bad. I've joked and told a lot of people I could have took my BB gun over there and done about as much damage. All the guys got back up north to Camp Eagle. That was where we were at. That was in a town called Phu-Bai. After everybody got back and we got back into the regular routine stuff, that's when I went out. That first trip, it was my first trip on my own. Excuse me, not with Pinkney, but first time I went out by myself. I went out with 2nd and 17th Cav, and the rumors that we had always heard about them, you don't go out and stay but one day, but you're guaranteed to run into something, and I was scared to death. And we did not run into anything. Our job was to look for enemy or places where they had been, with the infantry guys that were behind us. Like, my dog alerted, it kind of like a bird dog. He would stop and kind of point, and he was real good. As the dogs were trained back in Fort Benning, they were trained to sit when they made an alert. My dog wouldn't do that. He'd just stand there and point. Second mission, walking point, be the first person in line. If my dog alerted, I would stop everybody else. Whoever was behind me, I would tell them what I thought my dog was alerting on. Whether it was a booby trap, tripwire, personnel, whatever. We would send somebody up to check it out. If there was nothing there, we'd keep going. I didn't trust them to tell me there wasn't nothing there, because my dog had told me there was something. Several missions, we didn't run into anything. The most frightened I was, went out on a helicopter, and we were landing on a hot LZ. It's a landing zone. They thought people were going to be on the ground shooting back at us. There weren't. But the door gunner on the helicopter, he was prepping the area with his M60 machine gun. Just really, my dog got scared and jumped out of the helicopter. But he took off. Here's where we're going. Where's your dog? I said, I don't know. It was very embarrassing to say, I don't know where he's at. But he told us where we were going. He said, you're out here to Walk Point. You're going to Walk Point. And I should have said, no, I'm not. Because I was not trained as a visual point man. I could have got every one of us killed. But I did it. I went ahead and walked point. Scared to death. 30 to 45 minutes after we started, Rennie came running up behind us. I was real glad to see him. We walked about another half mile, and the guy in charge said, all right, let's turn left, and we started up this mountain. Rennie started alerting just like crazy on everything. We'd walk 2 or 3 steps, he'd stop. We'd walk 2 or 3 steps, he'd stop. And every time he'd alert, it was my job to tell whoever was behind me he's alerting on him. We found where they had just been. We were right on their tail. The strongest alert he threw, he just locked down just like a bird dog, like I told you all to go in. They went up and checked it out, and it was a bunker, and there was somebody in it. When they went up and looked, they saw somebody run back down in the bunker. So they went up and threw 2 hand grenades in the bunker. And of course it worked. They killed the person that was in there. And the captain, the guy that was in charge of us, he came up to thank me for my dog finding that. And I said, well, what was it? He said it was a little girl. They estimated her age to be about 12. And obviously the Vietnamese thought that she would slow them down in getting away. She was so frail. Her little arms, legs were about that big around. But anyway, after we left there, we made our way back to where the helicopter let us out and came back in. And a helicopter took us out to a forward fire base, landed and let us out. And then we were supposed to wait on another helicopter to take us out to the people we're going to support. Well, we waited and waited. We must have waited 2 or 3 hours. And nobody ever came to pick us up. Well, this big explosion. We heard this big explosion. Didn't know what it was. Well, the word came down. There was an explosion in the mess hall. That's kitchen. And we didn't think anything about it. About 10 minutes later, there was another explosion up there in that same area. And they told us again it was something that happened in the kitchen. Well, the Red Cross medevac landed, and they put somebody in that medevac. And that's when they told us to find cover. It was incoming rockets they were shooting at, or mortars. They were shooting at us. Well, me and this new guy, we found a good secure place to hide, which is what we were doing, is hiding. Because we didn't have a spot that we could find them. I mean, they could have been anywhere out in the jungle. So we were just trying to last a little while longer. And finally, it's kind of all clear. Stuff quit happening, and we got on a helicopter that carried us back in because it was too late. It was getting close to dark, and we weren't in the dark. Well, that's not quite true. I'll tell you a story about that in a minute. Came back in. Those were the one with the little girl. There could have been somebody in that bunker that was an adult. We didn't know. That God was with me the rest of my tour over because I didn't run into anything. We were practicing. There was 4 of us practicing rappelling, and we were rappelling out of a helicopter. And we practiced and practiced and practiced. We could land on a dime. We were jumping about 100 feet. This one particular day, nobody checked the ropes. One person jumps out one side of the helicopter, and one person jumps out the other side. The dog in a harness and the dog both jump out. Well, we did that. The next 2 guys that came out, the guy that came out on the side that I had just come out on, he got all suited up with his dog. And I was standing on the bottom. When you're rappelling, the guy holding the rope at the bottom can stop you. All you gotta do is put tension on the rope, and it stops. I was standing there with the rope in my hand, and I saw the other end of the rope come out of the helicopter. His name was Robert Norris, skinny guy. We called him Chicken Man because that's what he looked like. He had joined the Army just to get his citizenship. That was a real sad thing. And it wasn't long after that, Judy met me in Hawaii for my R&R. We had a good visit, and we got on the plane, came back to the U.S., and I got on the plane, went back to Vietnam. I had enough time in country and enough times out on missions that I never did have to go back out on a mission again. So all I did was lay around.
Play basketball?
Play basketball, play cards and play basketball. And I have looked back over my time, talked to people that had a lot of bad stuff happen. Honestly, the good Lord was just looking out. There were people that ran into stuff all the time. We had several guys killed, that shot, killed while they were out there. But I did. Yeah. I was blessed. Got on a plane to come home. We flew into Yokota, Japan, and from Yokota we flew in Fort Lewis in Washington. Processed out of the Army there. They gave us a brand new uniform, gave us all insignias and medals and all that stuff that we had. We flew into Chicago. Oh, Judy, I said, I'm in Chicago, I'll be home. It just a little bit. But when I got to the airport, Judy was with Mother and Daddy, and my brother and his two boys, Mike and Chuck, were at the airport. They met me, and I passed them. And Charles said, Eddie? He didn't recognize it. Hair was yellow. It wasn't blonde, it was yellow. I got to drive a real vehicle. I've been driving Jeeps for the most part. I was driving on Interstate 75, and those fools were driving 60 and 70 miles an hour. I was used to driving 30. I was out of the Army, stayed at home for a week and went back to work at GE. But when I got back to work, there was one person said thank you. Out of all those people I worked with, one person, he wasn't particularly a real good friend. His name was Jimmy Johnson. He told me thank you for what I went through. And that's the way it was everywhere, I think. I don't think it was just a local thing. I think it happened to a lot of men that came back. You want me to tell you what the war was about? I ain't got a clue. It's about aggression, communist aggression, and we were trying to dampen it, but that wasn't what we was doing. We was over there trying to kill every Vietnamese person we could find that was a soldier.
It wasn't your fault. People here thought that it was.
Got blamed for it. But that was a lesson.
If you could go back to 1968 and tell yourself something before you went to Fort Benning, what would you tell yourself?
I don't know. Just take the advice of those people that had been there before me and keep a low profile. D51, D, Company D, 5, 5th Training Battalion, D51, first something, I don't know. First Infantry Brigade, that's what it stood for. That was what we yelled out all the time, D51. I wish I hadn't had to go. And this sounds stupid, but I'm glad I did.
Yeah.